And we are live. I'm going to steal that from my friend Josh Engelman. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Opening Day MLB. This is the MLB Live Before Lock show presented by Cycle. If you want to play along at home, along as we go through the Sims, it is currently $1 using promo code Cycle here as we start off this program. We're going to be utilizing the Sims tool for the next 75 minutes. We have playback going. If you want to check out MLB TV in conjunction with it, we've got that live as well. But the most important thing is we're playing MLB DFS. We're going to talk stacking. We're going to talk pitchers. We're going to talk how to go about this here. With promo code Cycle, though, MLB DFS, get all of the fixings, our MLB projections, the Sims tool, everything there using promo code Cycle. But, of course, I should probably introduce my good friend Chris Spags at Chris Spags over on X. How you doing, my dude? Baseball season is here. I think we're all just super prepared, right?
We are. Yeah, Eric and I both have gone through our Excels lovingly. We are both bleary-eyed, updating all the data we had to get things ready to go. But MLB season's here. It's always fun to see the transition of things. For NBA yesterday, once Quentin Grimes is betraying me, I know it's time to flip the calendar, go to another sport. So MLB, we got every team playing today pretty much. FanDuel, an impossibly large slate. So it'll be fun being here with you, Eric, but man, it is hard to jump from sport to sport to sport. My brain is bleeding inside.
You're telling me Quentin Grimes wasn't going to continue shooting 65% true shooting by himself on a team of scrubs? That is shocking, Spags.
He's been shooting 61% only. I mean, it's a different sport. I won't bog us down with Grimes, even though Wade Boggs relevant, of course, always on baseball. But I would say that for Quentin Grimes, made me sad. It was unfortunately a day where Yabusele was getting shots up, the whole starting unit there, Edwards getting shots up, Council's getting shots up. It's going to happen, but there'll be better days, Eric. There's always better days. Better days in MLB with the promo code Cycle for sure.
Well, promo code Cycle, again, $1 to be able to jump in. That is in the link in the video description box below there. Sign up. I'll try to get this link thrown up here as well. But a lot of things that I'm manning over here. We've got playback. That is currently live here. You just go to playback.tv/Stokastic. I ended up putting on MLB TV here. We got baseball starting in 15 minutes for the New York Yankees. They're going to be rocking. We're going to be rolling, though, here in the DFS streets. And I'm going to take you on a little grand tour of how things are a little bit different in MLB. Spags and I are going to be talking you through pitchers. We're going to be talking you through stacks. We're going to be talking you through some of the nuances because I don't want to assume that everybody here has played MLB DFS before. It is truly my favorite of DFS sports purely because I think you're always live until the end of the game. Like you have a sweat going. You don't know, 7th, 8th, 9th inning. You have no clue how things are going to pan out. Sometimes you just need that pitcher win. Sometimes it's a stack that puts up 7, 8 runs late on a bullpen. It's a lot of fun. Spags, I know it's been a while for you in the MLB DFS streets, but I'm going to ask you right from the get-go, what is your favorite thing about it?
I mean, I think the difference with MLB DFS, number one, the results that the Stokastic team has had, the guys who founded the company have always crushed at MLB because the data really kind of lends itself the most to this sport. Obviously, NBA, there's some similar things. NFL, it's the Wild West. You guys know that. For MLB, though, if you're following the data, it all comes down to the batting averages, the splits, the park factors, the team totals, and all of that. It really does make it more predictable and also easy to get a lot of leverage against the chalkiest players, probably more than any other sport out there, where you're not usually going to play the NFL's crappiest defense versus a team like the Bengals is going to light it up. But here, in MLB, you could go against Garrett Crochet today if you want to and try to hit that Texas stack and hope it works out for you. And sometimes it does win all the money. So I think there's some fun wrinkles to it. It's something where you have to do a lot of work, I think, to get yourself ready to go. You have to hear a lot of acronyms, of course, of different stats that are going to be important. But I think with Eric, as he does in Lindy Locke's video every day, and what we'll try to do here is distill things down as much as possible. And ultimately, you're going to be deferring to the beautiful Sims products on the screen right now.
Yeah, it's not even like dumbing it down. We're just trying to make it as simple as possible for you here. There's obviously a lot of vernacular. We're going to bring up XWOBA and lefty-righty splits and things like that. We'll try to make it as easy as possible, but that's kind of what the Sims tool does right from the get-go. We have the data hub where you can go and column out every single pitcher here, no matter which site. We have the DraftKings site, we have the FanDuel site, and I do want to touch on FanDuel here right from the get-go. We've got, 10, 15 minutes basically until that slate begins. So lots of things to be paying attention to here. I'm trying to log back into my FanDuel, which sometimes is like trying to get into Fort Knox. Good Lord Almighty. Yes, here's my authentication code. I'm a real person. And now we can pull up the FanDuel slate, but wanted to just bring up some of the nuance here on the data hub before we start building out some of our stacks, because we've got plenty of time. 70 minutes that we're going to have here leading up on this program until we get to first pitch. The other nice thing I love about baseball is we get those lineups well ahead of time, Spags. There's very rarely going to be a late scratch of a player or a pitcher. And if it does, it's one guy, but you're going to get like usually 50, 60 minutes heads up. Whereas in NBA DFS, we're going all the way down to the wire all the time. And so I kind of enjoyed that part of it for sure.
Especially for opening day, too. I mean, we have the entire slate in front of us. The late games have not come in yet, so FanDuel, you have to wait a little bit more for that. But yeah, it is something where you generally know in advance. You have a better read on the playing time for the most part, as opposed to the NBA, where we all know those guys' minutes get jerked around. Here, for the most part, guys are getting you 3 at-bats, hopefully, if they're not getting pinch hit for. So, for baseball, I think the lineup thing is, I see the chat talking about it as well. Definitely a little bit of a convenience compared to the NBA is what it's trained us on, which frankly, we deserve better. So the MLB gives it to us.
Knights Gaming Studio KGS, pitcher late scratch a lot. No, it doesn't happen as much as you think, even though it already happened today. Tanner Bybee, he's not going to be pitching here for Cleveland today. We'll talk about how there's just a lot going on across the board, but I do want to filter out these games here early on because we have 2 games that are on the FanDuel slate, Milwaukee at New York, Baltimore at Toronto. So we're going to take these teams. We're going to go New York Yankees. We're going to add another one. We're going to go and team. Look at this. Just doing it on the fly. Could have probably set this up ahead of time, but that would have been no fun. We're going to just do it this way because I want to talk about the slate as a whole anyway, because on FanDuel, you can only play one pitcher. And Garrett Crochet, Yusei Kikuchi, 2 guys we'll definitely talk about here on FanDuel. They're a lot cheaper than that of Paul Skeens, a lot cheaper than that of Chris Sale, but there's not really a lot in terms of pitchers here. Carlos Rodon, 8,100, the first guy amongst those teams going early on here that's popping. Not somebody that I'm enthusiastic to play, although I do use prop information to try to indicate some of my play from time to time. 5.5 strikeouts, decent enough favorite here to go out and do that here against the Milwaukee Brewers. Not a ton of strikeouts at the top of that order here, but anything you're noticing with these first 2 games for FanDuel exclusively, Spags?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind throwing some Milwaukee stacks in because they are one team that jumps a little bit to me without bad. Rodon has been over the last year and change. And again, I have a rolling average trying to get a big enough sample size because for baseball, it's not like basketball where you want to focus on smaller sample sizes quite as much. So throw your DVP stats out the window, try to get that sample size up, at least 500 at bats ideally. But for Rodon, giving up about a 221 ISO over the last couple of years to right-handed batter is going to face a pretty righty heavy lineup with some righties on Milwaukee that are not the best, but still ones that like Rhys Hoskins does have some vestigial power from the good old days. Contreras also looks pretty good. So I think mini stacks going against Rodon appealed to me more than playing Rodon himself, but that was really the main thing that stood out for me for that first game. Obviously, you're playing in Yankee Stadium, a little bit of a park factor benefit there as well, especially for home runs. But Rodon just, I think, looks like to me one of the worst pitchers on the slate relative to his price point.
Yeah, and the Rogers Center, they closed the roof there, as you would expect. It's Toronto, March 27th. I got to say, I don't know what the weather conditions are. I'm going to guess cooler than normal up there in Toronto, although just across the lake, I suppose. We've got the Rogers Center there. We've got a couple of pitchers, Zach Eflin, Jose Berrios. I will say, I think 3 of the best bullpens in baseball, my Minnesota Twins, the Los Angeles Dodgers, and the Baltimore Orioles. Those are the 3 that I'm kind of looking at. We know Bautista, we know a number of those pieces there in the Orioles bullpen. Kind of freaks me out, even though Eflin, I think, is somewhat gettable and somebody that I'd probably want to stack against if I were playing on FanDuel. How do you feel about that game specifically? Because, I always like to stack against Berrios, but he's pulling no ownership. And in MLB DFS Spags, we like leverage. Leverage is good.
Yeah, Berrios to me, not really a player I would be getting to with the projection that he has. So that side of things doesn't look that good. As Eric mentioned, you're not really getting leverage against them because that projection is so low. For the Baltimore hitters, not a bad. I think to me, they look pretty much like an average team on the slate going against a right-handed batter. 24% K rate, 164 ISO, 303 OBP. My sheet is all color-coded. It makes it easy to reference, obviously, when we're talking on stream here. Yellow is kind of average for everybody on the slate. They're yellow and everything for me. So I think they're an okay team. This game, though, nothing stands out to me as like a must-have. The Toronto total looks pretty good. And Baltimore's total is not bad relative to some other teams on the slate. So I wouldn't begrudge anybody playing it, but I don't think it stands out as a game where like I'd want to play on FanDuel just to get access to this game or anything.
100% agree. It's not one that I'm trying to force. And I see right off the bat, Charles Moran, $5. Do you mess with the team controlled? The controls. We'll talk about the stack exposures, especially as we work through the DraftKings slate. I just want to throw this together because, again, we went live a little bit early just to be able to cater to the people who are playing over on FanDuel. We want to be able to talk you through this slate here as fast as we can. And then we're going to have plenty of time. A full hour in MLB DFS is truly forever. We'll be able to talk about the nuances of the Sims tool. We'll be able to work you through everything in the contest generator, how I go about trying to build the best MLB DFS lineups I can, and also just some of the stack exposure stuff. It's great to be able to build a pool that you think is going to be reflecting what the field is doing. And I think that that's really what the goal is. We have automatic settings that are set up to try to simulate that, but every slate has its own nuances. Anything that you've specifically done in terms of screwing with the stack type exposure specs?
So what I did before the show was I basically put in the four seamer, and then I think I have like 10 entries in the big tournament because I want to get a taste here, but I don't want to be on the hook for. I haven't done a live before lock with lineups in a while. I know Eric's gotten to be a pro in it, but it is a very difficult thing to do as a host to get your things right and get your ownership of line, especially if you're trying to get leverage appropriately. I just reached in and grabbed a few stacks that I like. So for me, that meant today you're taking a few stacks against Garrett Crochet because the ownership there, Texas Park, not the worst one in terms of the batting privileges there they're going to get in the park factors. But that would be one example where I just dug in, filtered down to Texas, looked around there. I also went through the ownership on the data hub, kind of saw who the chalkiest pitchers were. It really looked through the stacks for those a little bit more. Try to get some pitcher leverage against some of the higher owned stacks that maybe I'm not as into. A Washington would be one where I was trying to find some Sean Burke lineups, I believe is what I was looking at before. So there's a lot of different ways to kind of just filter down and find stuff. So I'm actually curious what you're going to say about what your best approach would be.
Yeah, so my best approach is truly using the normal settings. And then also I like to build out 2 runs. Like I'll run through the Sims and see kind of what type of stacks are showing up the most, especially on Coors Field slates, which we don't have today. Thank goodness. That would be a steroid way to be jumping into baseball right from the get-go, is having one stack be 25, 30% owned right from the jump, which is going to be what the road teams look like against this putrid Colorado starting staff, that's for sure. But I'm just going through here on FanDuel because, again, you have less than 10 minutes to be able to build out your lineups here. Saved our top 150. And one of the fun things about MLB DFS that we also don't have in the NBA is looking at stack ROI. Now on FanDuel, you're able to play up to 4. So whether it's 4-3-1, that being 4 batters from one team, 3 from another, and then a one-off, which tends to be one of your more popular combinations, or just 4 and 4. There are ways to be able to look at which stacks are showing up the most in your simulations. And so for me, there might be a time where I say, okay, 200 and what's the most that we have? 622 4-man stacks that got built out in our pool of 5,000 lineups here for Kansas City. Maybe I give them a little bit of a boost. Now, I think the 4-man stack ROIs are still decent enough. I know they say negative, but they're not so far off of New York and Toronto and Cincy that I find it to be all that egregious. So we're able to go back to the front, to the contest generator, and then build out another run that might reflect the way that the pool of lineups are showing up. And trying to make that pool as accurate as possible is going to help us figure out which players have the highest sim ROI when it's all done. Now, we don't have 5-man stacks that exist here on FanDuel, and you'd have to play one different pitcher. So the only time you'll have 5 players from one team is when the pitcher is with your 4-man stack. Then you also need to have a one-off. So it's impossible to go 4-4 in those type of lineups. So keep that in mind as well. But I'm going to look at the exposures here for everybody playing over on FanDuel. Let's start with pitchers, because one of the most leveraged pitchers, Mackenzie Gore, Cole Ragans, Freddie Peralta, these are guys that aren't in the best of spots, but Freddie Peralta going up against the Yankees, that's locking here in a second. I always call him Fastball Freddie because he's just, that's all he wants to go out there and throw. It hasn't been as effective, but it is sub 50 degrees at first pitch. The wind is blowing out to right field. I could see this going very well or very poorly for him, Spags. And that's the pontification of MLB DFS. I have interest, if I were playing on FanDuel, in playing Freddie Peralta over the field, considering he's at just 3.6% ownership. But I also have interest in stacking up the Yankees because some of these lefties could have a heyday. Hi, Cody Bellinger. How are you this fine day?
Yeah, that's what jumps out to me with Peralta, and it's been the case for his entire career. Would be you definitely can get the strikeouts going pretty well for the most part. Versus right-handed hitters, looking about a 31.5% a K rate for him versus lefties, 27% and change. But then you look at the ISO that he's given up, and that facing a lineup as well. Versus righties, he's given up almost a 200 ISO versus lefties a little bit lower at about 140. But then you also look at what the Yankees have their lineup today, where it's a 214, average ISO between these guys. You obviously have a lot of power in the middle of the order. So I think there's a boom bust for sure to Peralta with him being kind of underplayed on FanDuel. I think you can play that side, and frankly, getting the Yankees against them, not great weather, as Eric mentioned, but still park factor should benefit. They do make contact. So I think you can play it both ways a little bit on FanDuel. And this is one game, again, that would be nice to have on the DK slate that we just don't have access to.
Yeah, I wish we did have it on the DK slate. It would be fun to have some Yankees bats. Aaron Judge confirmed pretty good at the baseballs, except for in the postseason, because people want to bang on that point. Jazz Chisholm, Paul Goldschmidt batting clean up there. Jason Dominguez, one of the more exciting young players in all of baseball. Yankees fans have been clamoring for him to get called up for years. And, well, he's starting with the big club this time around, finally getting his crack at being an everyday player for them. So I'm looking forward to watching that. I don't really find anything else all that interesting. On FanDuel, you're playing one pitcher, and I think being flat if you're building out 150. If you're going to just play one pitcher, though, over on FanDuel for today, looking at some of these ownership spags, who would you be the most interested in firing up? Because my answer is unfortunately very chalky.
I like Kikuchi on both sites. I'm not sure our chances of getting the quality start for him as much. And that's something that's always a little bit tough for me to pin down, but I do like the price tag on both sites. Certainly a player that stretched out enough, as Eric was pointing out before the show. He was compiling all the spring training stats. Kikuchi has been at about 85 pitches, you said, I believe, before the show. Yeah. So he's been doing well enough in terms of being stretched out. Yep. So I think he'd be the one that stands out the most. Still like paying up for Skeens if you could afford it. But, frankly, opening day, probably your most casual MLB slate you're going to get. Those people know Skeens, and he's really expensive. So the sim pushes you to some cheaper pitchers that have similar upside. I still like Skeens, but you're going to pay an ownership tax that you might not want to pay for a DFS slate.
Wouldn't we just have weather on the first day? I mean, again, you start baseball March 27th, you're going to have weather in places like St. Louis. Twins Cardinals will be delayed due to rain on Thursday. Yay. Woo.
Take your hat off. You jinxed it.
Oh, my God. How could I? How could I? All I want to do is watch Matt Wallner and Trevor Larnach hit bombs. Can we just watch them hit bombs, please? Why don't we have roofs everywhere? I don't get it.
People like this. You go to the park, you want a beautiful day. I get it. A beautiful Minnesota day or beautiful St. Louis day. That's what you're looking for.
There aren't many of those in March and April, Spags.
Yeah, well, St. Louis has nice days, I think.
Is it ever a nice day in St. Louis?
Oh, they got good ribs, toasted ravioli. I think originated there.
Nelly.
Stuff. Yeah, got stuff.
Yeah, decent enough. Anyway, stacks that are really popping up for us here as well. We can look at individual player ROIs, but I like the stack ROIs. Definitely going to be something that pay more attention to. Oh, wouldn't you know it? Miami going up against Paul Skeens, mother trucker. That's going to be a tough one for me. But Washington sitting there with positive 4-man stack ROI. Now, you put all of this together, don't freak out that this becomes negative right from the get-go. Similar to when you look at individual players in the NBA, very rarely do you have guys that are above that 0% line. It really is about the sum of the parts. We're looking at how to put together leverage with the pitcher, how to put together leverage with stacks. And obviously, there are going to be days where you don't get the right combination or it's just so chalky and it becomes a very difficult uphill battle. But you'll see simulated ROIs a little bit lower than you'll typically see for top tier NBA slates. That's because there's more of everything is a high variance outcome. And so I'm really playing the ownership game in MLB. And that's where I really like that even though we have Cleveland, Toronto here, Garrett Crochet, even though we get to chalk your stack Cincy, Texas, Cole Ragans. Notice how a lot of these top pitchers aren't necessarily our top 3 sims before we get to a Kikuchi. Now, Kikuchi is my priority if I were playing on FanDuel. We'll talk about him a lot over on the DK slate, but I like the combinations and how everything is put together here in the sims because we are taking those 5,000 lineups. Also, make sure percentage to first, 20% are the main iterations on DK today. We'll talk about that, but right before, we got 2 minutes before FanDuel locks here, Spags. Anything you want the people to know over there before it tips off?
No, I mean, I think we talked about it. I think stacking up both sides of the Yankee game, I think really stands out. But yeah, Kikuchi, I think would be frankly, a flag plant for both sites. Raggins, I do prefer for DK, but I think he's coming up a little bit in the sim, and I would point him out as another good play. Crochet is coming up. I think those are all, if you're trying to find a player pool, it's going to be sim, friendly. I think that was coming up a lot for me before the show as well.
All righty, y'all. Now we head to DraftKings, and this will be the basis of our next 55 minutes here on this program before we jump over to the playback show. Very much looking forward to that. Get to hang out with my friend Greg Ehrenberg. And then an hour after that, we'll be doing the Tails exclusive show talking betting. I'm going to be sweating home runs all the live long day. Hell, I'm going to be doing that while we're on this show because Cody Bellinger, your boy, put $25 on the old plus 850. I thought that was pretty wide for Mr. Cody Bellinger. Wind blowing out to right field. Somebody who generally launches the ball pretty damn high, has the protection of Aaron Judge. Things, if it doesn't work out for Cody this time around, I don't know what we have to think about Cody Bellinger, but just stay healthy. You looked great at the start of last season. But let's start over in the single lineup simulator. And a really amazing addition. Shout out Sky and Alex and all of our dev team for putting this together. But we have this lineup function. It exists in the NBA and in the MLB as well now. Now, in MLB DFS on DraftKings, we are playing two pitchers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play Paul Skeens, one of the more popular pitchers right from the get-go. I'm going to combine him right now with Zach Wheeler. We can get a little bit different. And let's say I, for whatever reason, just cannot get away from the idea of playing Sal Perez at the catcher spot. Now, we can complete this entire lineup for single entry. It will come out unstacked. It is simply going to be from raw projection standpoint. So maybe a little bit more utility when it comes to NBA DFS. But I will say, MLB, I like to play cash early on in the season. And simply putting together configurations of the top cash team is a really good helper in figuring out where the field might go in tournaments and who some of the more popular one-offs are going to be here on a specific slate. Plus, we can change the lineup name right here. We could just say, all right, we're going to have our cash build right here. And then we have, why am I getting a FaceTime from my wife from the other room? Anyway, we've got ourselves this lineup saved up here now, and then we could create another lineup. So there is so much utility on the single lineup simulator for MLB. Plus, let's put together a 5-man stack of a team. Spags, throw a team out into the atmosphere for me right from the jump.
Let's see. I mean, I mentioned Texas earlier. I think it's interesting to go there and try to see if you can get that right. Not a top stack by any stretch, but still, Stokastic had it as having a, where are we at Texas? Because I don't think it was an embarrassingly bad number. Still a 4.5% chance to be in the top stack today compared to about 3.5% ownership. So I like the concept of Texas.
All right. So we just put together a 1, 2, 3, 8. And now I need one more human being here from the Texas side. Let's go to second base. And, or we already have Simeon in there, obviously. Jake Berger, big Jake Berger guy. He's going to hit bombs in Texas this season, that's for sure. I mean, he's hit bombs in Miami. That's not exactly the most homer-friendly park, but we can now complete our 5-man stack. Oh, valid line. Check salary and limits and yada, yada, yada. Okay. So we can basically come in, complete the lineup, but you can basically build out your specific stacks that you're looking for every single time now in the lineup generator. I find that to be a great addition. We could have our cash build. We could build out, this is our single entry team. We can copy it, have another one if we want to try a different iteration to sim against it. So many incredible features for the single lineup simulator that are brand new that I'm excited for single entry to be building out for cash early on in the MLB season before, the dog days of summer. I'm going to be taking advantage of that tool all the time. But let's go to the contest generator because this is going to be where we make our hay in MLB DFS tournaments. If you haven't utilized the Sims before, pool size, you can go up to 5,000 lineups. I always want to use the max that I can over here in the pool size. We could change teams. Let's say that we were worried about the weather. We could remove Minnesota and St. Louis from this pool. Now, I'm looking at the weather right now. I'm not that freaked out about St. Louis. I think that game will start in about an hour and a half after this little break here. So I'm assuming 2:30 my time. So yeah, around 4:30 in St. Louis. I think they'll be good to play, but we can remove them if we want. And then this was the stack type exposure that people were asking about. And there are preset settings because 5-3, 5-2-1, these tend to be the most popular stack type spags. So they get weighted a little bit more here. But I will say, one of the big changes in my MLB DFS process from the Sims has been incorporating unstacked and 3-3x, usually 3-3-2, 4x, 4-2x. They are crazy in terms of expected ROI on specific slates, especially if you're able to avoid, Coors Field slates. There's so many time spags where we could really have ourselves a grand old time mixing and matching these settings.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I know from the, really for me, a lot of my process in the beginning here, when I actually first started working at Stokastic back in the day, was like beating in my head, forcing 5-3s, forcing 5-2-1s. But that was at a time period where you still had so many of the people that were not stacking at all. And when that edge goes away, the Sims tool will kind of tell you where these things go. So I didn't have a ton of non-5-3, 5-2-1, 4-3-1 kind of builds. So I'm curious to see if there's anything that pops up that would be like particularly unique, because the Sim is better than hand building and getting that kind of thing and hoping you're going to get it right.
Did I click on an instruction video? No, Devin, you did not. But this is our very first MLB DFS slate. Plus, we got friggin' 49 minutes to be able to cover everything, all the ins and outs. I want to help you guys be set up for success. And while this is running, I might as well remind you, promo code CYCLE. It's $1 to check this out right now. $1 in the video description box below. If you guys go to the main site, doesn't matter how you do it, just take advantage. $1, you can play around, and then you don't have to listen to me talk about it. You can put me on mute. I totally understand that. But I do have some MLB DFS takes that are going to adjust things and people that I want to boost in the Sims for today. So don't you worry your sweet Bippy. We will get into all the ins and outs. But as I said before, 20% is going to be the percent to first that I want for today, because it's 500K, 100K to first for the main contest on DK. And then the 20 max, the best 20 max I've probably seen since NFL season spags, 20K to first, 100K total. I mean, this is the best contest we'll probably get all year in MLB DFS.
Yeah, I mean, in NBA, you get like a 10K max in the 4-point play. So to have that same structure and getting double it, obviously you're going to have a less prizes spread around there. But I don't know what the top 10 was offhand, but 20K for $80 put in, using a tool like the Sims to kind of have that kind of upside. A good day to do it, I would say.
All righty. Well, while this runs here, I'm going to ask you right from the get-go, because if you work through the data hub, my friends, oh my goodness, we've got a guy in Paul Skeens pulling quite a bit of ownership, but he kind of pales in comparison to Garrett Crochet. Garrett Crochet, he gave up 5 hits, 2 walks over the course of his last start, but 5 1/3 innings, got the pitch count up to a place where, I mean, it's just hard to look at MLB DFS early in the season in any other way. He's one of the best pitchers. He's thrown it over 100. He's got a pitch count that's built out. 90 pitches in his last start in spring training. Spags, how do we get away from Garrett Crochet in this matchup today?
I mean, I've been talking about playing some Texas stacks because I was getting so much Crochet. Got 41% of him in the semi-round before the show and my top 150 lineups. And Crochet's been good. He's got the highest swinging strike rate on the slate, 15.5%. Highest chase rate on the slate as well, which is a thing that Lofty and Shit My Money had coined back in the day, where you're talking about your swing strike rate plus your outside the zone swing rate there. So kind of trying to see how much a pitcher gets guys to chase around, basically, hence the name chase rate. That's a really high number too. So like the numbers look good. You're facing a Texas team where you have 5 guys that strike out above league average, above that, about 22% and change ratio. So I think that he's a really strong play today. But as we talked about earlier with MLB DFS, any pitcher could fail in a given day. He might not have the stuff today. He also, has had some blips in terms of giving up power to right-handed bats with a 163 ISO. So maybe that gets you. But the K rates are high. He's a strong play. So like, I really have no issue with him besides it's that much ownership.
Yeah, it's the ownership thing, obviously. And you're going to get so many sim ROIs that the most popular chalky pitchers, you get the stacks going up against them, because not only do you get points for the runs and the stats that they accrue, you also get negative points on the pitcher that they're going up against. And so if they fail, well, you're kind of getting double. You're bypassing those type of lineups that are playing the chalkier pitchers. So totally makes sense to me. We'll say he's stretched out. The guy's got the highest K prop on the entire board for today. Pretty tough for me to get away from some Garrett Crochet. But if you're in the Sims and you want to put an exposure cap and say, I don't want to play more than 25% Garrett Crochet because I'd rather get to other stacks, head to that exposure tab, putting max exposure of 25% for him there, and it'll run where you only have those 25% that show up in your top 20, your top 100, your top 150, whatever it might be. It will hard cap it for you. I think that's another amazing feature of the Sims tool to utilize for MLB DFS. But I'm going to open up the rest of the chalky pitchers for you here, Spags. We do have a number of guys to be looking at in the data hub, not just Garrett Crochet, but Paul Skeens, the aforementioned. And then from another pitcher perspective, Yusei Kikuchi, we brought him up on FanDuel. He's 6,900. He's got over, it's basically 6.5, both sides of it, -110, -115 for a strikeout prop against these lowly, horrible, terrible, no good Chicago White Sox. They do have Luis Robert. They have some major league hitters within the lineup, but fewer than most, Spags. And Yusei Kikuchi, 6,900, are going to be massive chalk on this slate. Is there anybody up here that you don't agree with their ownership?
No, I mean, I think for the most part, these guys are all some of the players I prioritize. Chris Sale, I didn't get a ton of, I think. I can confirm that in a second, but Kikuchi would be the one I would say, stands out the most here, going against the White Sox lineup with about a 28% K rate over the course of the last year and change when facing right-handed pitching. And Kikuchi's stuff, not anywhere near as good a guy like Garrett Crochet. That's why you're getting him so cheap. Kikuchi has about a 27% K rate overall. Swing strike rate, not nearly as good as a guy like Garrett Crochet or a Paul Skeens on the slate. And Frank Kikuchi too, getting barreled at a 9.4% rate as well. That's something where if you wanted to go to the White Sox stacks, kind of the same concept we talked about with going against Garrett Crochet with Texas, you could do that with the White Sox. And I think some of the top stacks will push you there, but you have so much Kikuchi for a reason because there's strikeout upside. He's facing a team that strikes out a lot. And if he has the upside, the outer band of his production is on the good side of things, Kikuchi should easily pay off that price tag. So I would say, Eric, I didn't actually go out of my way to do this, and I don't want to do it now while we're on the show, but some White Sox stacks and forcing that in a little bit more. I got some naturally, but I think that could be a good move.
I'm playing 2 White Sox stacks in my 20 max in the $4. So I'm 100% with you. It's not going to look good. It's not going to feel good, but it is going to project out well in the data. It's going to be something that pops up as you build out more lineups in the contest generator, which obviously I've been screwing around with all day yesterday, all day today, getting ready. Once we got our data updated, I was ready to rock, and it definitely made sense. I've never been a huge Kikuchi guy, but he looked awesome at the tail end of last season. He just is one of those guys who, when it's good, it's good. When it's bad, it's bad. And you want to try to be early to the party on some of those situations that you can take advantage of. It's the first slate of the entire season. Spring training, some guys just use it as bumper pads. Like, hey, we're going to try out a new pitch. Hey, we're going to just build up arm strength and coast and have some margaritas in Arizona. Trust me, I've been out there a lot for spring training. They're drinking. They're having themselves a good time as the veterans. Kikuchi, he wasn't worried about a spot in the rotation here. I'm not saying he's not a professional, but what I am saying is unexpected things are going to happen. And when you start to see a 6,900 guy that I do assume is going to be the most popular SP2, fewer Skeens Crochet lineups just because you can't get to all the fixings you want to. Kikuchi, somebody that I'm willing to undercut a little bit, but at 20% ownership, I mean, it's pretty spread out in a way where I'm not that concerned. I guess I am a little concerned about Chris Sale. Now, one of the things in matchup-based data, San Diego, they don't strike out a lot. Going back to last season, they just really find ways of being effective no matter what when it comes to just avoiding strikeouts. You work through this specific lineup that they're rolling out here today, and there aren't a ton to be had. You get Fernando Tatis, 21.9%. But Luis Arraez, his strikeout rate last season, 4.3%. It's the dumbest number I've ever seen. Machado sub 20, Xander Bogaerts sub 20, Jackson Merrill, one of the best rookies in baseball last season, 17% K rate. Only Yuli Gurriel, who I can't believe he's on this baseball team, and something named a Brandon Lockridge, who's supposed to be pretty good. We shall see, Spags, but he had very few, like 5 at-bats last season. But I look at the San Diego Padres, it's a very tough spot, but Chris Sale is the kind of stuff that is unassailable. Like, he's back to the height of his powers, and at 19%, I think his ownership, if he comes in lower, it wouldn't shock me with how many people who want to play Paul Skeens. We saw all the time last season. This 35% can turn into 40, 45% in the blink of an eye. I really like Chris Sale for tournaments, but not if he's going to be 20%. What say you about matchup-based data when it comes to pitchers?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with the field on Chris Sale, and it does stand out. His rank on the top pitchers chart as well. One of the tools we have with Stokastic, he's got an 18% chance to be one of the top pitchers on the slate, so pretty high in the DraftKings slate as well. You're talking about going against San Diego. San Diego's total is pretty low, 3.2 is a run total here. Also, park factor is going to benefit Sale here. San Diego giving up less home runs, less everything than average. Actually, a little bit more in home runs, but less triples, less doubles, less hits, less everything else besides the home runs. So good spot for Sale overall. Facing a lineup here, as Eric mentioned, I think a little bit of risk, but there's only one guy who strikes out above league average, but Sale stuff is good enough. He's also right there with Garrett Crochet in terms of a 51% chase rate, 14% swing strike rate. Doesn't get barreled too much either, only a 7% rate rounding up, so towards the lower side of the slate as well. So you're talking about a guy not giving up a ton of power, avoiding bats, in a good park with a good total. So fits the criteria of what you should be looking for a pitcher you're going to try to build around on a slate.
Austin Wells getting things going with pop right off the bat. Leadoff hitter for the New York Yankees goes yard. That's fun to watch in real time over on playback. That's for sure. Aaron Judge just took a cut at that one. I love you, Spags. 39 minutes. We're going to be still having some baseball on in the corner. God, it feels good. Playback.tv, friends. Got MLB going for the rest of the year. Can't wait to be a part of that. And obviously, we'll be heading over there at the conclusion of this show for another 2 hours of fun. All right, let's start talking some contrarian pieces, shall we? Because I have this guy, Michael King, and I have player-based takes. 8% ownership is not enough for Michael King. He is somebody that I definitely want to be overweight to. Now, once again, we have to be so sensitive to what these pitch counts are for guys. And so I just want to double check because now I think my sheet is a little bit screwed up. But going to San Diego here, his very last outing in spring training. Those are the things you always want to double check because here we go. I'll find it here in 2 seconds. Michael King, he didn't really get worked up the way that some of the other guys did over the course of this season. We saw Dylan Cease got up to 74. Stephen Kolek, I don't even know who that is, 85 pitches for him. Michael King got to 65 though. If that turns into 80, this Atlanta squad, I know some people are high on them. I think they're going to strike out a lot more this season. I think they're going to see some massive regression based on previous seasons. I just don't think they're all that good this time around. They haven't improved outside of Schwellenbach, who's going to be an amazing rotational piece for them. I don't love what they're throwing out there on a day in, day out basis. Now, San Diego played very homer friendly last season as well, but Michael King does a great job avoiding some of the long balls that Atlanta really thrives on. I think he's a very interesting tournament target. Do you feel that way about anybody else that exists on the board for today?
I mean, King, I could see being a play. I didn't get him a ton, only got him at 9%. I guess the field's at 7, so a little bit of a pro stand there in favor of him. Yeah, I mean, look, I think King to me at that price tag looks pretty good. Trying to go through my exposure to see if anybody I have set out because a lot of guys I'm pretty close to the field on. I would say for me, Cole Raggins, similar price tag, 8,600, got him in 31% of my lineups. Fields at only 14%. He's going against a Cleveland team that does have some dangerous power, 193 ISO, but strikes out about league average, has 5 guys who strike out above league average within that lineup. And Raggins had a 47% chase rate, 14% swing strike rate. I think he's got some decent juice. The barreled rate, 6% as well, towards the lower side. So that would be my stand. And, lefty going against a team that does have a good amount of lefties in it. I don't mind. King's fine too. I think there's a lot of pitchers that don't stand out as having spectacular stuff, but have some merits to them. And I would say Raggins and King would be 2 in that range that I feel pretty okay with.
Yeah, I feel okay with them as well. Definitely don't think that they are again, I'm not going to be playing him in 30, 40% of lineups, but I definitely want to be over the field to him. Hunter Green against San Francisco. It's freaky because Great American Small Park always can do weird things, but the guy has such good stuff that I just want to continue to invest in Hunter Green here. As you look at the projections, there's not a huge difference between these starters because, again, there's a hard cap basically at 90 where nobody's really going beyond that unless there's just a complete outlier here early in the season. Somebody's just got it really, really rolling. Is there anybody that you find yourself lower on than the field when it comes to the top tier guys? Because Zach Wheeler going up against Washington's one of those stacks that's really showing up in the Sims for me here. I am a fan of Cruz. I'm a fan of James Wood. I think they've got some young prospects that are really going to take a jump this season. We saw Cruz at the end of last season, saw Wood for most of last year. Just got to work on getting that launch angle up a little bit, sitting right around 2.5 degrees. That's not going to cut it here if you want to be a power hitter in the major leagues and hit for some massive bombs. But I look at Zach Wheeler, another year on the tires for him. What say you about anybody that you're lower on than the field?
So I did naturally get a lot less of Paul Skeens, actually a negative 24% leverage on him right now. Fields at 37% expected, or at least before the show, 37% expected. I got him at about 13.5%, which is a tough stand to have. Like, I did make sure to get Skeens in some of my highest dollar lineups, some of the stuff where I'm playing in larger tournaments, because I do want to have some exposure there, where if he does hit, I can get the biggest payout. I do think the spot is good for Skeens, but like we talked about here, you have a lot of guys in that mid-tier who are decent enough. Skeens day one opening day. I mean, he's loose enough to be able to throw a pitch.
Oh,
We expect. What? Loose enough. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, I thought something happened that you needed to cut to, and you're like, no.
I'm trying to get the Sims just went away for me here on the screen, so I got to fix that. But anyway, continue talking.
Yeah, so with Skeens, look, the numbers are great. As I mentioned, he's going against Marlins team. The lineup has about a 27.2% K rate versus right-hand pitching. But, on any given slate, somebody can get hit hard. I don't expect to be Paul Skeens, but I think the more likely outcome, if you're trying to play it the Sims way and get him that, that little relative to the field, is that he's just overowned for what he is. And I really think that is something with baseball and really any sport, when you have these opening day, first day of NFL, same thing. Some plays kind of come very obviously to casuals. And I think, not to disrespect anybody, because I love Skeens to play too. I'd love to play him, but you know how ownership works. You know how it goes. And in baseball in particular, just go to somebody lesser owned. If whether it's Crochet, whether it's Sandy Alcantara, who cares? Just play anybody, because they can possibly have a better day than Skeens in that kind of volatile way that MLB works out.
Yeah. And from a betting perspective, obviously, we're all about volume betting to try to get down money where we have an edge. And that has kind of been the basis of this lovely tool. That is, of course, Portfolio EV, where we are going to be updating a lot more of these markets. You can kind of see we've got Nate Lowe showing up here. We've got James Wood, somebody that's popping up here as well. A number of these different players that are starting to pop up. Isaac Paredes, somebody that is going to be very important if Houston's going to find success. Does hit a lot of pulls. Crawford boxes in Houston. What up? How you doing this fine day? But the main reason that I'm bringing this up is that, well, the same kind of thing in MLB DFS. Oh, none of that was showing up. There we go. Great job producing, Eric. Awesome. Anyway, we've got an awesome opportunity for you guys to be able to jump in. 7-day free trial. That's really what it's about. Portfolio EV. So many MLB markets to bet on. So many opportunities right now to jump in for the low price of $0. That is right. Free 99 for a 7-day free trial at the link below of Portfolio EV. It's rocking in the NBA streets. It's rocking in the MLB streets now, NHL as well, where the shots on goal market has just been hand over fist making money for people such as Greg Ehrenberg, Laffy, and so on and so forth. Check out Portfolio EV right now, my friends, as we head back here to the simulator. Here we go. Boop. All right. Now we can build out our lineups. I've already uploaded a batch. I kind of want to build out some more here today on today's slate, because we're trying to build out a lot of lineups rather than just one to rule them all, one to find them. Reduces some of your variance here as well. We can get exposure to lots of different stack types, lots of different stacks, pitchers. We can kind of mix and match here, and that's the fun part for me of MLB DFS. But we covered the pitchers. Let's start diving into the stacks here in the next portion of this program. And the game environments aren't as interesting as what they're going to be come July, where we get a ton of wind, ton of volatility there, but we get some open roofs in some spots. It's going to be more applicable to the evening slate, considering Arizona will be playing with an open roof, but Texas, Arlington, they've got it open here at the moment, and there's some wind blowing out to left field. I think that's at least one that's interesting. We got cooler temperatures across the entire board, but if you had to build one stack for today's slate, based on everything that we've talked about, Spags, I'm curious where you would land in single entry.
So it's tough for me to say with single entry, because part of me would say get leverage against a seemingly chalky stack that does occur naturally. And I'm actually curious your thoughts about, because we haven't talked a ton of position players, got a lot of KC in particular, got a lot of Bobby Witt. And usually for MLB, at least, when I've had some success in the past, trying to fade a positional player when they're going to be owned as much as he is, 25% projected ownership. I got him 32% in the sim, and I didn't really work it down in the way that I probably should have. I think Witt's a good play. I think the KC stack looks pretty good with their total as well, just shy 5 runs there. But that team I would build around, but they seem really chalky and they occurred very naturally for me in the sim. So I do worry if maybe they get a little bit overplayed if you are trying to kind of split hairs on that.
Well, I mean, the main thing is you're just getting such a weak starting pitcher out there now
Mhm.
relative to what we were expecting. We're getting Ben Lively showing up in our lives. Now, he was decent last season, 3.78 ERA, 1.25 whip. But let's compare that to everybody else across the entire board for today. You're getting the aces of the aces on every single team. And now you're getting Ben Lively as a guy who's basically getting a spot start, not even somebody who was going to start tomorrow or anything of that nature. They didn't move him up a day or anything. And so you get a Kansas City team taking on a much weaker starting pitcher and might have to go to the bullpen a little bit earlier. Not sure how built up he's going to be here right from the get-go. But considering it's not Tanner Bybee right from the get-go, I got to like Kansas City with you. I think that that's definitely a nice angle. We know Cleveland's end of the bullpen, very, very good. So you want to try to get there as much as you possibly can early against Cleveland because it gets exponentially more difficult to put up runs on them later into the game. But I'm with you. Again, Kansas City showing up in the top sim ROI lineup. Kansas City, 4 of the top 6 lineups in simulated ROI. It's a really hard stack to get away from, Spags.
Yeah, I mean, Lively just doesn't look that good. In particular, left-handed hitters should be able to get something going with him. Giving up a 230 ISO to lefties, also giving up a 5.1% home run rate. So not quite double league average, but close enough to it that he'd be bright red on the sheet for me. Not striking guys out either. Only a 19% strikeout rate overall over the last couple seasons. So and a big enough sample size as well. Like we're talking about 1,000 batters he's faced in the last few years. So for Lively, I don't think he's an impressive player. He doesn't get guys to chase. This team doesn't strike out. I think you're going to have some extended bats. I would say that the bullpen thing that Eric pointed out may be a little bit of a risk for going heavy on KC, like it seems like we're going to. But I got so much of India, of Witt, of Pasquantino, of Sal Perez, who I know Eric also liked. That top 4 of the Royals is really easy to get to, and obviously they'll be facing Lively likely, at least 1 or 2 times at the very least.
Yep, for sure. Jose Ramirez. The first Noel. This guy's got so much pop. It's actually stupid against Cole Ragans here. Lots of Cleveland bats, lots of Kansas City bats. One thing that I think is a kind of interesting angle in MLB DFS too is trying to have exposure to the same game environment. Obviously, you're both facing different pitchers, but if the wind, which is blowing out today in Kansas City, is playing a big factor, I mean, 78 degrees in Kauffman Stadium, it's about typical for what you're going to get over the course of like the entire MLB season, but that's drastically warmer than Cincinnati, 62 degrees, 57 degrees in Chicago, 70 degrees in Houston, where they're probably going to end up closing that roof if I had to guess, because there is some precipitation in the area there. I think there's lots of ways where you can get early in the MLB season a little bit of an edge by just saying, hey, hopefully this is the game environment that's way better for hitters than anywhere else, Spags.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And again, when you see that really high total for KC, like that obviously is speaking to something here, hoping they're going to get going. And KC's park is not a great home run park. Park factors would be like a 15% decrease in home run production, but better for everything else. 4% overall, 8% more runs, 6% more hits, some more doubles and triples because the way the stadium is shaped as well. So like, I think there's opportunity here for both sides, but I like Ragans as a pitcher, so I don't want to hear about the Cleveland stack. I just want to hear about how good the KC stack is going to be super chalky is.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. So some of our best leverage, I mean, it's okay to play chalky pitchers. I mean, that's the other thing that I've just kind of embraced more with the Sims is Kikuchi, Crochet, both of them. I mean, we are getting over the field to both, and I have no problem with it whatsoever here in our top 150. You get some interesting stacks, though. Obviously, we talk Cleveland, we talk Kansas City, we talk that spot. I want to talk one-offs with leverage. We got 2 of them here for the White Sox. We've got Luis Robert. We've got Andrew Benintendi going up against Kikuchi. And I said it before, Kikuchi gives up hard hit. He will give up hard hit. It is not something that's even like debatable. He's a great strikeout pitcher, but when he gives up contact, when it isn't 100% for him, I don't care that it's the White Sox. I just think that you want to get that leverage against a Kikuchi here. And his chance of a win going up against Sean Burke and these White Sox in general, yeah, it's definitely going to be higher, but you're very rarely going to run into situations where, like early in the MLB season, that the win is just some guaranteed lock situation purely because, well, lots of ways that you don't get to a 5th inning and complete it. So I really like the idea of getting some of these White Sox one-offs. Not really seeing them so much as a stack. We have a little bit of Corey Lee, 5% of him in our top 150. I do like the Angels side a little bit more as a full 5-man stack, but how do you feel about some of these White Sox as one-offs that are popping in the Sims?
Yeah, I got Luis Robert as a one-off enough here. Got him at 17% of my top 150 lineups, so almost 3x the field, which for MLB I think is a noteworthy enough stand if you're not used to how the exposures and ownership generally work. They do have a 13% chance to be a top value today, according to the top stacks tool. So I think that does speak a little bit to how these guys are underpriced if they do, flip Kikuchi and have them get the worst side of things. And I'm with you on the concept that Kikuchi just getting hit hard a lot. 64% hard hit rate for him overall, giving up a 310 BABIP. So if you're getting the ball in play against him, you're going to usually do well with it. And on the home run power there, it's an over league average home run rate, just shy of 4% rate allowed overall. And it gets a little bit higher to lefties for the few guys in the order here, like Benintendi in the 3-hole. Not that he's Mr. Power, but like there's some guys that are going to have some decent shots against Kikuchi to get something going. So I think really it's one thing. We talk about it with MDA a good amount where it's like, hey, if LeBron fails, there's a decent chance Luka Doncic has a better day because that's the way that stats work. For baseball, it's just more direct, where if you have player X fail, if Kikuchi fails, that means that maybe the one-offs hit or 3-man stack at the very least, maybe a shot of a 5-man stack, even though it seems unlikely with the White Sox total.
Yeah, the White Sox, only 24 5-man stacks in our 5,000 that we built out. Hi, how are you this fine day? So definitely going to be getting to the guys that I think deserve to be in the major leagues, that being Luis Robert, Andrew Benintendi to some extent. Left on left, not ideal, but doesn't really matter as much for him. Angels, way more exposure to them. Obviously, the 5-man stack ROI, not crazy here on either of them. But I want to talk about the Houston Astros because this is kind of an interesting one to me. I'm looking at the roof open right now. I want to get confirmation on that here one more time, but precipitation is in the area. That's why I'm asking. You get this new construction of Altuve, Paredes, and Walker that are encapsulating around Yordan Alvarez. Yanner Diaz, who's got some of the bigger reverse splits amongst hitters in baseball there. He's always been good going back to AAA and then to the big leagues. He's better against righties. Yanner Diaz is a righty killer and terrible against lefties. I don't understand why that is. Sometimes with some of the Dominican-born players, they don't see a lot of left-handed pitching, and so there might be some kind of warts that exist there. I'm not sure what to make of that. I just look at the data, and Diaz is somebody that's really popping for me. And I think Houston, I'm rolling them out in single entry as it stands right now. How do you feel about the Astros going up against Clay Holmes, who traditionally one of the better pitchers in baseball, but that is as a reliever, Spags.
Right. Yeah, so big acquisition for him. Obviously, they brought Holmes in the hopes that he would be able to, be a starter, and then clearly being an open day starter is a pretty big cosign for him. I mean, the rates jump out to me. He's keeping the ball down really aggressively with a 65% ground ball rate, one of the highest marks in the slate. His fly ball rate also only at 18%. And I would say the Houston's park going to be league average and everything in terms of the park factors. So you're not really getting a boost there. I look, Houston has enough talented hitters where I certainly wouldn't begrudge playing them overall. But in terms of say slate versus a righty and Holmes, like I'm not seeing a ton here. And Holmes is just home run limiting, 1.1% rate allowed overall, 4.1% barreled ball rate. You're talking about basically a guy who's one of the best, hard contact avoiders on the slate. Doesn't get a ton of chasing, so maybe Houston can get to him, but I think Holmes should be able to mitigate damage well enough based on this larger sample size.
Okay, maybe I hit eject on it here to some extent, but one thing you see routinely is these guys who go from being relievers to being lengthened out to being starters. They do see, unless they're Michael King, who's just a god and shall be treated as such, but most of them see regression in just about every single statistical category because you're not going out hurling as hard as you can for an inning. You have to make it last for 4, 5, 6 innings. There's probably a joke in there somewhere as well.
Really, too many euphemisms in this sport. I feel like basketball gives you some, football gives you some, but boy, we're hitting euphemisms left and right here on the baseball.
Golf gives you the most, though. Maybe that's what it is. As I grew up around golf with balls and shafts and whacking and swinging and.
So Volpe home run too. I don't know if that matters for you.
I don't have Anthony Volpe. He fucking.
Again, we talked about Peralta's volatility. I think it's official, guys. We got to take right here, though. It is the baseball take where it's like this guy gets some strikeouts. Boy, he can give up some home runs, and that's welcome to MLB content, guys. It's gonna be a year full of it.
Oh my God, 2 homers, none of them Aaron Judge or freaking Cody Bellinger. What are we doing here? Come on, Yankees. Whatever.
You spent your $25 unwisely. You should have put it on those guys. You would have made so much more. Imagine.
He chose only
So class. It's honestly such a classic MLB slate start, though, from us saying that. Then they hit the home runs, but it's not anybody you would call to hit home run in a million years.
Yeah, let's check in on Orioles Blue Jays as well here. I'm going to take a look. They just started that game. So they must have been doing like the American and Canadian national anthems before that game and maybe gave, somebody a ball and did whatever, because that game was supposed to start at the exact same time. But that is neither here nor there. 2-0 Yankees. That's the fun of playback, man. Head over to playback. We're going to be there in 20 minutes covering everything afterwards, being able to sweat some baseball. Myself, Greg Ehrenberg, cannot wait to have playback in our lives here throughout this MLB season. Live sweat some homers, live sweat some K props. Ooh, darling, it's going to be a lot of fun. But let's round out some of what we're looking at here in terms of MLB DFS. Haven't just asked you point blank, who are the stacks you're getting the most of, Spags?
I did force myself to more Texas than I probably should have. In terms of my overall exposures for stacks, let me just pull up that tab. I am getting a good amount of KC, which is not a surprise given what we talked about earlier. Have them about 4%, 5% in 5-man stacks. Got a lot of Angels, 13%. They're actually my high 5-man stack. So really not terribly in love with it, but the price point works well enough, and they're facing the White Sox. So that's probably enough to get there. What are your thoughts on the Angels here? Because I don't think we've talked a ton about them in terms of the hitting environment.
I think the Angels did some sneaky good stuff. Now, obviously, it's going to only matter how far Mike Trout can stay healthy, because they're going to suck otherwise. That's just kind of the way that their entire franchise has gone. But they're still waiting for Zach Neto, who is going to be way better than Tim Anderson, or at least the version of Tim Anderson we saw last year. But Taylor Ward is really good, like really, really good. Logan O'Hoppe, who's batting 7th, is one of the better hitting catchers. And then I have a Joe Adele problem. I think Joe Adele is just supremely talented, and nothing's really gone well for him. But this really comes down to Sean Burke. We didn't really see him until the tail end of last season, had some decent K stuff, but this is a full-on rookie showing up here opening day. And you can't tell me that that is going to be some kind of a positive here. And then you're getting the White Sox bullpen, which just yielded, it definitely bought people houses in the Bahamas last year. If you just stacked against White Sox pitchers and bullpen the entire year, other than Garrett Crochet, life was really, really good, Spags.
Yeah, so I think Burke would intrigue me here. The issue is he doesn't project that well. He honestly barely came up for me in the sim, so I was like, all right, I can't really get leverage against the Angels, but I'm playing them a lot. But I think the price tag works for them. I think it's a primary stack. Clearly coming up a lot for me with a 13% rate in my top 150 to be 5-man stacks. But definitely the Angels, I think, fit well price-wise. Trout, obviously an easy click at price tag, frankly, low for what he's been historically at 5,100. Hopefully he'll be full go again. We don't know how that's going to go. But got a lot of Rengifo, got a lot of Logan O'Hoppe, like Eric mentioned. Really 10% of a bunch of guys. The Angels just, I think, were a very easy team to get to. And I wish Burke were more playable, because I think it'd be good leverage too to balance it out.
Yeah, he's fun. Let me double check his pitch count. Again, these are the things that I'm supposed to do. Oh, Adley Rutschman going yard. This guy was smacking baseballs in spring training. It's hard to know what's real, what's false, but Adley Rutschman, man, Florida's a more difficult hitting situation. In Arizona, the ball just flies. The ball flies. It's a little bit warmer, thin air, gone. But Florida, Adley Rutschman was hitting bombs out there, and nice to see that carry over on opening day, because he's like your contrarian AL MVP. He's already one of the best defensive players in baseball behind the dish. And now if he just starts hitting for power, oh boy, is it over for MLB.
Yeah, didn't hit for power very much over the last couple of years versus righties. So seeing that correct a little bit here, though. You did talk about going against Barrios a little bit earlier. So again, another thing that we're on the scent of on.
God, I hate him. Go Twins. Go Twins. All right. Our last chance to see Mr. Burke. He got up to 87 pitches. Spags, if you have a Sean Burke take, Vinny Capra, I don't know who that is. If you have a take about Sean Burke and you think that he's stretched out enough, which it looks like he is, 89 pitches, 87 pitches, I think you got to get a little bit in the portfolio.
Yeah, I mean, he legit wasn't coming up in the semi-round before the show, so I didn't really get there, and I kind of figured this must be a guy that's not going to get enough of a pitch count, but he's averaged or given up a batting average of 174 against them, 220 BABIP, 29% K rate overall, only faced 76 batters, so we're nowhere near the sample size we want to have any sort of belief in this. Got barreled pretty hard, about a 9% rate, but did get guys to chase at 46%, so I see some underlying signs of somebody that can be useful, and he's facing a team that's basically a league average strikeout rate, a little bit over 23%. But with just how many Angels you're getting, like I do think they're a team that occurs naturally. Like I didn't do any manipulation to get that much Angels. I do think they're a team where if you can play Burke a little bit at 6,300 and take the shot, 2.5% owned. I just got so many Angels. You want to play the pitcher against it at that point.
I really like the idea of the Cincinnati Reds today too. And this is one that I was really sad. Didn't really look all that good there in the Sims. I'm going through it here. One of the more negatively leveraged stacks that exists on the board here. We have Atlanta, by far the worst against my boy Michael King. Boston going up against Texas. Although, again, that roof, if it is open, that should be carrying out there in Arlington. And then Cincy against San Francisco. I just kind of look at everything for today's slate. And, well, if I want to get to Paul Skeens, who's stretched out and the best pitcher in baseball, if I want to get to Garrett Crochet and his 7.5, 8.5 Ks that we're kind of expecting for him there, hard for me not to like Cincinnati with some of the price points. Matt McClain, he's back and healthy for however long, 4,600 for him. Gavin Lux, you had some injuries there that brought him. I think he's playing left field today. I believe that's what I had seen, what I saw from Cincinnati working through it last night. But TJ Friedel, decent enough there. The main issue is Logan Webb, low contact that he's going to give up, but gives up some hard contact from time to time at least. And you have Christian Encarnacion at the end of tail end of the lineup there. Spencer Steer, who's back and healthy for the time being. Heimer Candelario had moments last year. I think 1 through 8, 1 through 9. Jose Trevino as well was Tyler Stevenson on the IL. This is kind of a sneaky stack where they're a little bit cheaper, but they're popular, I guess. So that's probably why they're not showing up as much in the Sims.
Yeah, I think that, not a bad total of 4.1 implied runs here, and, the good total on both sides as well. So kind of like Eric was talking about, maybe you do capture an outlier environment here where both teams are scoring more runs and press to try to score more runs overall. Yeah, I'm not sure I would want to go against Webb. He doesn't really get a ton of strikeouts, under league average, the 21.6% rate over the last couple years. Doesn't give up a ton of home runs either, under 2% there. Fly ball rate's also pretty low, but he's also playing, in San Francisco for most of the time here. When you go into Cincinnati, that's going to be a big boost, about a 28% home run boost over the last couple of years, according to StatCast. Going to increase runs about 10%, park factors overall, an increase of 5%. So I'll never begrudge anybody going against the pitcher in Great American Ballpark. I'm just not sure that Webb is your ideal guy that you're expecting to blow up immediately.
Right. That is fair. That is fair. What did I just, I X'd out of playback. That seems like I'm a bad, there we go.
They've got me in there. That's all they need, right? I think
that's really all it comes down to. Yeah, no, I suck. I'm awful. Here we are. Now I'm clicking on the correct things. I want to go to the single lineup simulator. Let's build out an Eric and Spags opening day extraordinaire. No, this is not going to be cash build. This is going to be God's chosen lineup. Here we go. So God's chosen lineup. It doesn't even all fit in the top bar because, that's how this is going to work. But let's do a little bit of a draft. You and I picking players, picking stacks, putting this together for the people. And then we're going to run a lineup simulation on the single lineup simulator based on what we talked about. This is what you should be utilizing if you're building out one single lineup for MLB. This is what you should be utilizing for sure if you're playing cash games. But I want to start with the one with the only Garrett Crochet. I'll take the chalk here at pitcher and let you decide where you want to go next.
No, I think that's fair. Now I won't be able to go Texas and ruin the lineup for us, so that's a positive.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
No,
yeah,
I think it's fine.
Cool.
Let's go.
I'll do my guy Michael King. I'll be a bitch. Here we go. Michael King.
All right. Well, do you want to try something weird and just save a lot of money at pitcher and see what we can do? And just let's get pitcher out of the way. Let's do Burke. Yep. Let's do Burke at pitcher and see how that looks. I don't think it's going to sim well. We're not
sim well at all.
No, we're not. We're not feeding the sim what it wants, which is probably Crochet, Kikuchi.
There we go.
Something like that. So yeah, let's do that
way. Kikuchi for now, and then obviously we'll flip in Burke and show the people the difference. Okay. But it's a volatile opening day here at the bottom of the board on pitcher. So I will say that your boy Burke, Yeah, I might give him a little bit of a boost here in the last 10 minutes and run one more sim myself. But let's start going through the stack portion of the program. Is it Texas Rangers? Is that what we're feeling today?
I mean, I do think that's your best leverage. I do like the park factors a little bit. I don't think the team is one where I look at the numbers and I'm like, oh, you got a team of crushers necessarily. But you got a lot of power in the middle of the order with Langford, Garcia, Berger, Josh Jung in a somewhat smaller sample size. Been pretty good overall. 190 ISO across everything and 700 at bats. I would go to, I have a feel for the Rangers. They're going to fucking put up no runs today. That's the thing with baseball. Or they're going to put up runs and it's going to be Josh Smith who hits home runs for them. But yeah, I like the Rangers conceptually enough that I'll put them in.
I don't mind this whatsoever. Oh, we have tons of salary to work with. So I put in a pretty rudimentary start. Jake Berger, obviously, just anytime he faces a lefty, even if it is Garrett Crochet, it is what it is. I'm going to find ways to get to Jake Berger. Josh Jung, same thing. He was a big omission from this lineup from their World Series run. Last year, they struggled without Josh Jung in the lineup. Corey Seager is a god left on left, even if. Kevin Pillar out there against a lefty as well. Wyatt Langford. I don't mind Adolis Garcia as well. I'm hoping for a rebound season after his last year, which was just brutal relative to expectations. But I think this is a pretty good construction. So I just took care of all of the expensive guys, of all the cheap guys here. So Kevin Pillar flat 2K. That's kind of an interesting addition for us here. But I'm going to let you pick out where we want to go here as far as our spend up bats.
I mean, we're so not chalky at this point. I think we could play wit and just take the chalk there if we wanted. We don't have to get super unique at this point because we've definitely decreased the ownership product enough.
Yeah. Oh, for sure we have. I mean, it's Michael Massey, the only guy who would be available for us there. Jonathan India next to Sal Perez, kind of like the 4-5 here going with Kansas City. And then we've got money left over. And this is probably the portion of the program where I can remind you, there are times in baseball where I will leave $1,500, $2,000, $2,500 of salary on the table. It's not often because you still want to get to the big boppers up top, especially in the outfield or, the Bobby Witts and things of that nature. I mean, maybe we do put Bobby Witt and put a Texas Ranger out into the outfield here, Spags.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, to me, I would have probably played Higashioka at catcher, and I think that would have thrown off the feng shui a little bit because then we would have a little bit more at outfielder to go to. But I've given you enough direction here. We can follow your lead from this point on. We got Texas in. I'm just making people lose money today. Yesterday was Grimes. Today, guys, we're gonna lose some money on Texas. Let's have some fun.
Oh, Quentin Grimes. Who could have ever seen that one coming?
Shut up. It's the thing is, like, it still makes sense. Like, I know how I got the projection. I know that it still aligns. It's just when you got fucking Yabu putting up 15 shots, things get thrown off in the underlying usage.
Yeah, we're going to take out Massey here. We're going to throw one more here as we're working through this. Oh, man. Luis Renifo projects the best at second base. That doesn't feel good. Second base is such a shit position again this year. Oh, my God.
Yeah. So I feel like that's the case every year in MLB DFS, though.
Matt McClain is my boy. So we're going to run this and see how this works out right from the get-go. 2,500 left over. You could put that towards Michael King, turn that into Paul Skeens.
Hey, look, it's positive. We'll take it. We're not joshing the strategy show, but we're doing okay.
Oh my God, look at that. We got positive right off the bat. Honestly, with here's what I'm curious of. What happens when we go to Paul Skeens just and eat the chalk? I mean, is the same really
to play Michael King over Paul Skeens is a little bit batshit, I think.
Eric down on Holmes, Spags higher on him. It's not that I'm down on Holmes. Great lineup. Look at that. We got the real stamp of approval there. But overall, I do think Texas, along with some of these one-offs, I like the idea of Higashioka there at catcher, Mike Trout there in the outfield. You could go with Renifo there in second base if you want to go 5-2-1. So many fun ways to utilize the single lineup simulator right now. And I will repeat for the third time in this program, promo code CYCLE. It is $1 at the link below in the video description box below to get yourself MLD, all the stuff that we offer here, MLB DFS wise, the Sims, the single lineup simulator that we just worked through, Spags and myself, all of the projections. If you guys want to utilize those and change things on your own, you can go into the lineup sims and screw around with it day in, day out. You want to jump in now, though, because, again, offer ends April 3rd. Give yourself a full week to try it out and see why it's the best product in the MLB DFS ecosystem. All righty. Anything you want to talk about here in the last 6 minutes, Spags? Because again, we taught the people how to use the Sims. We talked about some of our own like no ball takes. We covered some of what MLB DFS, how it differs from other DFS sports. Is there something that we're missing?
Do we want to pick home runs? I think
Oh my God.
if I'm going to be on live before locks, I think we can bring it back. I don't know if it's stayed a feature as much as I think it should always be a feature.
Yeah.
The dull roar at the end really makes it where it's just you feel like you're in a nuclear holocaust created by one Eric Lindquist.
All right. We got to be careful because this is the big thing that I have to preach on this portion of it. When we talk dongs of the day, I am talking about DFS. This is the DFS program. I want leverage in my home runs. I also want to just get the raw points in my home runs. This isn't price and probability, which is the biggest part of betting home runs. So when I say who I think is going to homer, if I don't say bet them as well, that is a huge difference. And it is insane to me how many times last year people would be like, what an idiot call, you suck. And I'm like, why did you bet this fucking scrub at plus 320? I was playing them at a 2% home run because they're high probability of hitting a homer against a popular pitcher. But that's neither here nor there. I'm done talking. You're nuking.
But I could trigger you like this. So that the puppet didn't even have to come out. I just had to say home runs.
I just turned it into puppet. Yeah, I'm just the puppet in real life. Is whatever. Chris Bags, who's going yard for the people in their lineups today?
All right. I mean, I feel like my brain just keeps going to Texas, and I don't know that's the best move, but I'm going to go with. That's a tough one, man. I should have had a pick in my mind before I suggested this. I'm gonna go.
You only had an hour and 10 minutes to figure it out.
I know I didn't have nearly enough time. I'll go with Josh Young. I think that I did when we didn't have him in the first stack. I was like, I want to get some exposure to Josh Young. I think the price tag looks pretty good. Third base as well. He's got about a 260 ISO versus lefties. Should hopefully be able to get to the chalk Garrett Crochet and ruin everybody's day.
Oh my God. Well, what a call by you. I don't mind that one whatsoever. I think Josh Young is supremely talented. I think he's pretty incredible. Now, somebody else that I also think is pretty incredible, Bobby Witt, but we're not going to go to Bobby Witt because I feel like
you can't go to Bobby Witt after I took Josh Young.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like when you picked Aaron Judge once upon a time. Don't forget, I did shows with you 3-4 years ago. I remember what your shtick was. Your shtick was taking the chalkiest player on the board every freaking time, and it drove me nuts.
Well, because it was pushing back on Josh because he kept doing it, so it became like this weird mental warfare game. But that's why I like the home run game, but it does become pretty perverted by a certain point of things.
All right, well, let's just go to somebody else within that Kansas City lineup. I think he's due for a huge year. And you look at the catcher position today; it's pretty brutal. Sal Perez. He's just eternal. The guy is just never going to turn it off. 28 homers, great game environment relative to the rest of the slate. I don't think that can get emphasized enough. It's just like 78 degrees with wind blowing out in Kauffman. Yeah, Kauffman's not a great hitting stadium, but this is a better hitting environment. And you're getting to go up against Ben Lively, who I think is the weakest pitcher on the board outside of this Sean character throwing and hurling for the White Sox. So not a normal ace for opening day going out there for the Cleveland Guardians. Give me our boy Sal Perez, Spags.
I think that's reasonable. I think Witt looks like the best chance at home run, but Perez not too far off. So good pick, and we didn't go crazy chalky. So don't bet on it though. For the love of God, don't place a bet.
Yeah. Maybe hit that a little bit harder than I was anticipating, but that's neither here nor there.
Don't trust me with it. I swear, this is not betting serious, Lindy. This is fun, silly DFS, Lindy. I feel like that's the disclaimer there.
We didn't even get 200 likes, so I guess we can't have Puppet Lindquist close out the show for us, even though I want them to. But what I think we do to close out the program is we tell the people where they can find at Chris Bags over on X elsewhere in the world.
You can check out so transitioning my NBA channel, actually renamed it today to @SplashPlayBets. So I have an NFL channel @SplashPlayPod. I'll be starting to do some NBA and MLB, in particular with NBA now. Deeper Dive, I believe, not going to be a regular show anymore. So if you want to get my NBA takes, you have to check me out @SplashPlayBets for my NBA stream coming up, and same time as your playback stream.
Oh, we're starting up.
We're going head to head.
Oh, baby. Oh, you. I'm an idiot. Don't listen to me. I'm Eric Lindquist. You can follow me at Eric Lindquist over on X, but it's always fun to have it be opening day. It's even more fun to have it alongside my friend Chris Spaggs. So give him a follow over on X. Go watch his program. Have it on one screen at the same time that the playback link that I just threw in the chat. You guys jump over there as well. We're going to sweat baseball. Sign up. Get yourself MLB TV. I believe they even have like a 7-day free trial thing going for people if you don't have the MLB package. I got charged like a month ago, so shout out MLB for doing that for me. But I'm all ready to
get those bills paid.
Oh, dude, I was just like $300 because, of course, to get the Dodger games here, you got to pay like another infinity dollars. But that's neither here nor there. We are ready to rock over on playback, ending our first MLB DFS stream. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Promo code CYCLE one more time for the people. We out. Have a great day.